This is TFC 2021 podcast with Garrett. Now, you pronounce your last name Mueller or
Mueller?
Mueller?
Yeah, Mueller.
Mueller.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Like it rhymes with color, is what my dad always says.
There you go. How old are you, Garrett?
38.
You look like you're 25. So
Yeah, thanks.
So
Yeah.
so that makes me feel a little better. I was a little bit worried that somebody in their 20s could be as bright as you. But that's outstanding stuff. This is one of the weirdest days of TFC for me, because it is kind of like if TFC had a child, and I'm not, you're 38 years old, but the fact that you are a Feed the Cats, Triphasic, spring ankle, sprint-based football, Steve Jones culture guy.
Right. Yes.
It's
Yes. You, like to completely round everything out. Right.
Yeah.
In all those phases. Yeah. It's been quite the journey, the last 3 years of just finding, our place with everything and taking all the great things that all you guys put out and trying to piece it together for our program and trying to then, come up with a product that works for us. It's been an awesome journey, and have all you guys to credit for everything.
Well, but I really think what's so beautiful, like Brad Dixon tells the story about him asking me for detailed practice plans, and I said, I'm not here for that. I'm
right.
here to, I'm playing like the Zen master or something. I'm like, I'm not here for that. I'm here to teach you how to cook, not to give you the damn recipe.
The recipe. Yeah. Yep. And that's what we had to figure out.
Yeah. And you have a recipe, and your recipe is not exactly like Brad's.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing, I think that's what's great for, coaches to be able to watch this and be able to hopefully latch on and learn as much as they can, because it can be implemented wherever you're at. I think you recently tweeted something out about, how it magnifies or any scheme or program that you're in, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're a spread team, whether you're a triple option, under center, power T, whatever you do, it's going to amplify your program and what you're doing. And you can implement it wherever you're at. Take some time and some work. But if you're willing to put that in and do a ton of learning, it's an amazing journey that, I'm so thankful for the growth that I went through going through that. And after having done it now, being in our third year, we'll never go back and do it another way.
And I think that's a good point, because when people hear sprint-based football, which is code for Feed the Cats, and they think, oh yeah, because the game's really changed. Spread, they play all across the field now. They stretch the field deep. Speed's more important than it's ever been. But I coach freshman football a lot, and we were under center and ran the T.
Right.
And I think it's really important to have fast athletic linemen and really fast running backs, and be fast defensively, even if you're running a 1940s offense. And Brad Dixon runs, he runs like double dive like 30 times a game.
Yeah, I think he throws it like 3 times a game. And you come watch our game and you would say that's a polar opposite of what they do. Even not like defensively, they run an odd front and we're an even front. So like couldn't be two different, types of schemes that we run, but our success and the athletes that we're able to produce and put on the field is like you said, amplified because of the Feed the Cats approach that we take to what we do.
And I'm not pretending that Coach Monken at West Point is feeding the cats, but and people who, obviously they run a very traditional smash mouth type of program, and they always said that they had to do that because they didn't get the athletes. Now, we're talking about games where 6 guys from Army hit the 20-mile-an-hour mark.
Right.
And they're bragging about it. And they're like, so I really think, like I say, I'm not saying that he feeds the cats or anything like that, but I think they value speed.
Right. Well, and they're probably, I don't know what their recruiting classes, have looked like over the years, but I would imagine they're probably not getting dramatically different kids now than what they used to get, but they're able to build that speed because of the approach that they take. And now they're, amplifying their athletic ability that their guys had, or what they're bringing in, and just maximizing that potential and able to grow that speed. And now it's transferring then to their success on the field.
One of the things I want to lead off with here tonight is I want to talk about your dad.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'm a coach's kid, and
Yep.
I hear you talk about your dad, and I think it's very similar, for me, I coached for 41 years, and I'm considering the idea of doing what your dad's done and riding off in the sunset as an assistant for one of my sons.
Yeah.
And was your dad an old school guy? And how did he take to this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been, I would say, so going back to kind of the start, he started his career back in the mid 70s, coaching football at a small town in Wisconsin, and then kind of found some early success and moved to another school and was there for a long time, and ended up over the course of his career a little over 30 years as a head football coach, and is in the Football Hall of Fame in Wisconsin for all his years of service and success that he had. And I would say, his approach, definitely not the way anything like what we're doing now, but I would say he was a little bit different, a little bit ahead of his time with the way he approached, number one, just building culture in his program and developing relationships with his players. I think in growing up around his program and seeing that connection that he had with the players and how much, they meant to him. And I think in turn, then they would say how much, he meant to them. That's something that I really took on as a coach in my development and made that a priority from that standpoint. He was, from like a schematic type scheme wise, he was implementing like spread passing type concepts earlier probably than most small town high schools were in the state of Wisconsin. So he valued, I think, athletic ability and speed earlier on than most coaches did. I don't know how much he necessarily trained that and developed that in his program, but certainly valued that and emphasized that to their success. And so then, so he retired as a head football coach my senior year of college, 2007. And it was kind of, a weird thing growing up with how important football, or how big of a deal football was to our family, to me and to him. He actually coached in another town than what we grew up in. So my mom was a kindergarten teacher, and my dad was a Phi Ed teacher and guidance counselor. And so he actually taught and coached at a town about 45 minutes from the town we grew up in. So by the time, once I got to actually playing football in like middle school and high school, he rarely got to see me play. He would get to see video after and stuff like that, or we'd have a lot of conversation about what happened in the games. But on a Friday night when I was growing up, going through high school, he was coaching in one town and I was playing for another team in another. So he got to see a couple playoff games of mine growing up if his team had like lost and our team was still going. But you could probably count on one hand the number of games he got to see me play in high school. And I know that was really tough on him and wore on him, but I never resented him for that or anything. And there was some talk I remember growing up about, or I thought, like, should I go, play for my dad at this high school? But I had such a strong connection with my friends, and actually the football program that I grew up in was one of the most successful in the state of Wisconsin. We won 5 state championships over the course of 10 years, kind of as I was growing up. So had that opportunity to kind of stay in my hometown program. But so then after I graduated college and was going into the coaching world, and had the opportunity to coach here, hour and a half away or so is what it is from where my parents live now. He asked, would you be interested in having me come down and help you out? And it was a no-brainer, right away. It's like, yeah, of course. And then, we had kind of that conversation about how it's kind of our second chance or second opportunity to share the sport of football and how much it means to us, and being able to go through that together now, when really it was very separate experiences for us as I was growing up. So that's been really special to me. He started when I was an assistant back in 2013 was his first year starting with us, and then has kind of been with the program as I've taken over as the head coach in 2018, and still comes and lights a fire under our guys and has a great time being at practice every day. So he's very much
that's a
with
unique
us.
Story.
Yeah, it is. It's not pretty uncommon, I guess. Yeah, you'd say for what you find.
And the players call him Pops.
Players call him Pops. Yep. So he that's what my kids, that's his grandkids call him Pops.
Oh, okay. I got you. Yeah.
So, but then our football players call him Pops. So instead of saying Coach Mueller 1, Coach Mueller 2,
yep,
it's Coach Pops. And so he's the senior member kind of the coaching staff. And we have a pretty young staff for the most part. Most of us are all under 40. I have 2 or 3 older guys on staff that are great. My dad's, the oldest of the bunch now. But
how old's your dad?
He'll be 70. So he's 68.
Okay. Yeah, he's like 6 years older than me.
Yeah.
So I'm picturing being called Pops by it.
There you go. Yeah, down the road here eventually.
Yeah.
Right, when you got 2 Coach Hollers on staff.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, tell me about, was it just super easy to sell new ideas to your staff, or was it a struggle?
It was. I wouldn't say it was a struggle. I'm fortunate to have a pretty growth-minded group of coaches, younger group of guys that I had developed a really good relationship with as an assistant over time. And a lot of those guys kind of stayed on the staff as I took over as the head coach. We've brought in a few new guys over the last year or two, or 2 or 3 years now. We've had pretty much the same staff, but that was always something I was looking for as a coach, like-minded guys that, or at least from a growth mind standpoint, that they were willing to try and learn new things. And so I've been fortunate enough to have guys that are willing to do that. I know for some of our guys, it was just like, what is this, or how is this going to work? Really, football is a contact sport. Speed's great, but if we're getting blown off the ball or whatever else, who cares? And like, so many people have said on here before, the results speak for themselves. And we started implementing it early on in the off season in 2019 and saw some pretty dramatic results during the off season with our speed and strength numbers. Players started to kind of see and recognize and feel the improvement and the difference, and our coaches saw it as well as we went through the summer. So by the time the season had started, we were a good 8 or 9 months into that process. And by that point, they were fully bought into the results, speaking for themselves. And we were fortunate enough that first year too, to have a pretty special group of seniors, our first year of implementing it, that, were full on, buying into what we were doing, just great kids, willing to try something new. So it was a great group to start it with, because then they kind of set the standard there a little bit for the rest of the groups underneath them. They saw the success that they had, ended up going undefeated and winning a conference championship that year. And so just because of that, success that went with it, I think it was an easy buy-in for them. And then we just kind of continued to roll from there. So, I have 2 or 3 assistants that really do a great job of helping me out with our off-season programming and our sprint stuff. And a couple of them are RPR certified and have done a lot of, TFC clinics and stuff and watching. So they've kind of gone through the process with me, learning and growing through that, which is great. So it's not just like me trying to disseminate it to everybody else. We have multiple coaches that are well-versed in it now. And, have started, trickling down to our middle school as well.
Wow.
Which is awesome. So, we'll have in like 2 or 3 years, we'll have, when those kids are seniors, they'll have been through, 6 full years of that program, because we have just one middle school in our district. It's attached to the high school.
Wow.
So, which is great. So I have, my hands and fingers kind of in that program and helping guide and direct that. So, and those coaches have fully bought into that mindset and that philosophy as well. So it's just great. We're seeing those results at a middle school level, at a under varsity level and a varsity level, and just across the board, we've had some pretty awesome results.
I've often said that that young coaches have really missed out on one of the most important things that can really, really change your mind about a lot of things. And that is your own kids going through a program.
Yeah.
When your own kids have the joy of sport stolen from them, you can't even imagine that right now with your 3 little ones.
Yeah.
You really can't even picture what it would look like. But my boys all had the joy, and my daughter too had the joy of certain sports totally stolen from them by tyrannical, old school, traditional, I would say abusive coaching. And I was just picturing, I saw the picture of your family at the end, your beautiful family at the end of your presentation. And just think about your own boys getting to go through a positive program like this.
Yeah. And that's huge, right? Like you said, just the joy and the experiences of all that. And that for me is the biggest, like when I took over as the head coach, one thing I talked about with my assistants was it's got to be about the experience for these kids and delivering the most memorable experience and the best experience possible. Like I want being a part of Stewartville football to be the best memory of their high school career as they think back on it. And I think up to this point, we've been able to do that for the most part, at least, in our results, wins, losses wise. And then too, just in, our exit meetings that we have with players and conversations that we're having, guys really enjoy being a part of our program. And, like the Feed Gets, philosophy says we want to be the best part of their day. And so everything, that we're doing and trying to implement in our program, we're always trying to make sure we go back and answer, that question. And if it's not,
do you actually say that to your kids? Do you?
That's the best part of their
that you want football to be the best part of their day?
Yes, all the time.
Yep. See, I think there's something magic about that. I used to think that as a chemistry teacher, I was almost bragging when I said chemistry is going to be your favorite class this year. No, wait a minute. It's going to be your favorite class of your high school experience.
Yeah.
That statement alone makes kids like you.
Yeah, sure. Right. Because then they know your intent, right? And,
yes.
And everything that you're doing is I'm trying to create this great experience for you. Here's where I'm coming from when we're trying to do that. And then that buy-in is there and you start building that relationship and the trust, which is huge. And then it just springboards everything.
Yeah. I think those kids actually go home on that first day and say, I think chemistry is going to be my favorite class. And then what it does as a coach is or a teacher, it forces you to live up
to
that statement.
Yep.
And so maybe we should say that more often. Like sometimes when I speak, I say, I'm not going to give you 1 or 2 things to take home. I'm going to try to change your life today.
There you go.
It's the same statement, right? It's like the coaches are like, damn, they kind of lean forward, like he's going to try to change my life.
Okay. And like, you're right. What's coming now?
Yeah. And so they're eager learners. And then me, I better have a good presentation after that opening line.
Yeah.
So
back it up.
I absolutely love that. And so, I always say that I'm evangelical about this shit because of kids and they only get one chance to go through. But I would like to ask you the question, could you make the argument it's even better for coaches than it is for kids?
Yes. Yeah. And, I think I watched Dan Casey's podcast with you, and he talked about going through the process of learning something new and having it completely blow up, your prior preconceived whatever notions or beliefs on something. And that was what it was. I mean, that was completely the process that I went through back after kind of my first year as a head coach. Guys were tired, grinding, not having a lot of fun. Definitely was not the best part of their day. And it wasn't our coaches probably weren't enjoying it a ton then either.
It's
and
hard.
So it's hard. You're right. It's a ton of work then to continue to maintain a success. I mean, anyone can just, half-ass an effort out there, but to, again, deliver the best experience possible for a kid and then continue to maintain that, it's a lot of work. But if you do it the right way and balance it with everything else and take that feed the cats approach and put it not only to how you're developing your program for your players, but as with your coaching staff and try to make it manageable for your coaches so that it could be the best part of their day.
Yes.
That's huge because now they're going to give their best at practice, and it's just that reciprocal process. It's that feedback loop that you talk about, right? That it motivates them to continue to find new and better ways to produce a great experience for their players, and then the players have that and they get better, and it's just a positive feedback loop for everybody. And I would say not just our players are happy, healthy, high performance. Our coaches are happy, healthy, high performance, and we don't have a ton of turnover then either, because that's huge. Like keeping and maintaining a consistent coaching staff and the people that are delivering that message and coaching those kids. If you have turnover because guys are burned out or don't like it or don't enjoy it, that's really tough on the success of a program. And so we've been fortunate enough to continue to have the same coaching staff in place, and that's been huge for our success then as well.
There was a couple years ago, there was a coach that had flipped it from being the ultimate grinder to 100% feed the cats, everything. And he said that the craziest thing of the year, besides their success and the fact that he finally loved everything about football, was that he got a letter from a coach's wife saying that he had saved their marriage.
Nice.
Think
That's
about
amazing.
that.
That's huge. That's amazing.
But when you're a miserable football coach that has to chew on kids' ass every day to get some effort out of these plow horses, you go home and you're not a nice guy.
I would say, you can't disconnect or whatever, be a different person at home then all of a sudden. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and that was probably the heart, like like you said, the coach's kid, right? Grinder, work hard. That's been that for me, that's been the absolute hardest piece, is to try to find balance and less is more, and find the things that are the most impactful, focus on them, not try to do it all. And I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress. I'm not there yet by any means, especially as a head coach. There's always something to figure out or to problem solve. But I like to think, at least I hope for my assistants, we do a good job of helping them stay balanced so that they can enjoy it and their families, can enjoy it as well.
Yeah. After your presentation, I just kept shaking my head thinking how lazy I am as a coach. that thank God you have short practices, because you're doing so
well, right? Yeah, it's all.
I don't go paintball playing with my team. I mean, it's just an amazing all this stuff that you do.
Well, and that goes back to that experience piece. It's like football is great, and we love being out at practice. But what else can we do to help enhance, that experience for those guys and make it the best part of their high school experience? And, a lot of that, that team stuff, just getting away from football and appreciating each other and continue to build those relationships and those experiences. I tell the guys all the time, like, I think back on my playing career, and, there's a handful of games or plays that I can vividly remember. Most of the stuff I remember is like stuff that happened before, after practice, time spent with my teammates outside or off the football field.
Yep.
So we want to try to create as many of those experiences for our guys as possible.
Let's talk about some specifics here. We've talked about I think we talked about the most important stuff already.
Yeah.
Because everything else is just details.
Yes.
Once your mind is straight, everything else is just details. Yeah. So now you talked about in the weight room, VBT stuff.
Yeah.
Do you go with VMAX Pro?
We don't. They're called push bands.
Okay.
So we are fortunate enough to we have a full-time strength and conditioning coach that our district contracts out from a local healthcare facility here in the Rochester area. His name's Eric Pohl. And that was a huge, talk about super random coincidence. Our district was looking to hire someone in. So I used to be the strength and conditioning coordinator for our district. And I would, have all of our guys in season, but then in the winter and spring, I was supervising the weight room and putting programs and things like that together, but very few other programs were using the weight room. So it was mostly just off season. And then it was a lot of my off season guys that were there. So fortunately our district invested in a full-time strength and conditioning coordinator, a paid position. And so he was able to come in and start working with a lot of our other teams in the district. And then our football guys, in season, to take some of that off my plate. So again, from a Feed the Cat standpoint, that was huge, that I didn't have to now do all the strength and conditioning development on top of coaching X's and O's and program development, all that kind of stuff. And within the first hour of our conversation, it was triphasic training, all that. It was great. We were right on the same wavelength. So I've been super fortunate to have a guy come in that basically wanted to do everything that I did, but now I don't have to do it and he can. So that was huge. Yeah. And just super lucky and fortunate and coincidental, didn't know who we were going to get. Basically our district just said, hey, we need someone. They hired a guy and sent him to us. And so for that to work out was amazing, because that could have, in hindsight, been a huge conflict potentially for our program and what he wanted to do versus what I wanted to do. And at that time we were still, strength is king. We were not speed stuff yet. This was 2018. So it was after that, it was a year kind of after that we both started to kind of, dive into the speed world and TFC stuff and Feed the Cats. And it's been, a ride from there. So he was the one that he kind of had went to our district and talked about getting some velocity based equipment so that we could track bar speed and things like that for our program. And so he had gotten, they're called push bands, and it works. It's similar. It's a less expensive version of VMAX Pro, but does the same thing. So we're tracking in the weight room velocity on the bar for our core lifts, hex bar deadlift, bench, and then safety bar split squat. So we really don't do any power cleaning anymore. We don't do much back squat at all anymore. We do some front squat just to put them in that position a little bit. But a majority of our stuff is focused on hex bar deadlifts and safety bar split squat. From a hex bar deadlift standpoint, then we are strength is still, in the sport of football, strength still has value, right? Especially with our middle school and under varsity kids still growing and maturing.
Just to interrupt.
Yeah.
Would you say that, okay, strength was king 2018,
right?
And then speed was king.
Yep.
Are you a weaker football team now because speed is king?
Nope. And that's the best part about it, right? And we didn't know that going into it necessarily, but it was are we going to trade? Is this going to be a trade-off? Are we going to be fast, but then lose at the line of scrimmage, which is huge? If you ask my players, oh, what does Coach Mueller value? Winning the line of scrimmage, because I say it all the time. Blocking and tackling, right, is still what football boils down to. The team that blocks and tackles the best is probably going to win. And so we're still able to do all that stuff at a high level. And that's been the best part about it, because now our guys, though, going through that and doing it, feel so much better and enjoy it so much more than they did. Like, guys aren't sore and tired and dreading coming to workouts. Now they, again, that now for me, I'm in that, have moved from football to our off-season workouts being the best part of our guys' day. And so finding ways to make that exciting and something that they look forward to after school, not a dread or a grind that they have to go do, they get to go do it. So to a point, we are still trying to, well, number one, we're just starting with like moving well, right? And just getting guys comfortable in positions and moving. And as they kind of go through middle school up, 9th and 10th grade, then we start to continue to develop and progress through the triphasic stuff. And ultimately we're trying to get to a point where kind of that diminishing returns with strength. And so when you get to the point, for us, we've kind of determined about 2 times a person's body weight on the bar on a hex bar is strong enough. And so once they can deadlift 2 times their body weight, it's like we're not going to have any more positive really effect from getting any stronger at that point, at least in terms of their transfer to whether it be football, basketball, baseball, you name it, whatever sport they play, because most of our guys are 2 and 3 sport athletes. And so at that point, then we're really tracking bar speed. And so we're looking for how fast now can you move, that weight on that bar. And so like when you look at, I think I put a picture in the presentation, what used to be, it says strength board still at the top, because when I ordered that 10 years ago, strength was king. And so it was bench, squat, power, it was all maxes, 1 rep maxes. And now basically we had to like buy some magnetic paper and put it all over the top because we've changed everything. And now we don't have like a max lower body strength lift even on there. So we track bar velocity at 2 times your body weight on the hex bar. And so that's what they get record ranked and published essentially on that board for that. And then we have, we still do bench, and then we do like a safety bar split squat. So putting yourself in that unilateral position, more sports specific, and then how fast and explosively can you move that bar. So, and it's great for the kids because they love it. Then they get that immediate feedback. They know how fast they're moving the bar. Everything they do then is more intentional than it was when it was just a weight on the bar. Now they get that immediate feedback and they're competing, against guys in their group on how fast can I move this bar. So the intent is there. The training then is better, because anyone, you and I could go do the same program, but if your intent is different than mine, we're going to get something completely different out of it. And so the intent is better than it's ever been with that as well. And then we see the transfer, in helping in not just getting guys stronger, but improving their speed as we go through the off season.
Yeah, I think this is just really one of the things that when people say, I really am intrigued by your ideas, but football is still a man's sport. And we've got to be strong and we've got to be tough. And what they picture, I think, they picture a choice between
like a one or the other,
tough, or you're going to be fast.
Yeah.
And I think that, if you spend too much time in the weight room, it will sacrifice speed. But yes. I don't think the other way around is correct. I think that if you're fast and fresh, you can be absolutely violent on the field.
Yes. Well, right. And I would argue that the only way you can be as violent as possible is by being fast and fresh. Like, yes, you can't be. You can't be as violent as if you're tired and sore and worn down. Yeah. And so that's like, because of Feed the Cats, we're more violent on the football field.
I love it. And, Lombardi, everybody's favorite grinder, said that fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But people use that statement to run kids' asses off.
Right. Because that's what's good.
Yeah.
And it's completely the opposite.
After the 100th grass drill and the 40th gasser, let's say fatigue makes cowards of us all. That's why we're doing this. And they're using the quote wrong, that you should use that quote talking about getting enough sleep at night. And that's why we're not running gassers today, because we want to be violent on Friday.
Yes. And that's been, the our philosophy now for the last couple of years, and guys would tell you that, and we're constantly asking our guys that, like you said, do you talk about making this the best part of the day? We do that. And then we're constantly asking guys, how do you feel? And checking with, obviously their sleep, and then using like our speed numbers as we're tracking those through the year to see how healthy and fresh you are. And we'll change and modify practices during the week if guys aren't healthy and fresh. We had a week this year where we didn't wear pads during practice for the week because we came off a tough game on a Friday. Guys were a little banged up. Numbers weren't great on a Monday for our sprint session. And so we just went helmets all week, and we blew the team out on the Friday at the end of the week. So it's like performance is key, right? And so everything we can do to maximize high performance on a Friday night, and grinding a kid during the week is like you said, the exact opposite of what you should be doing.
Give me, people call it the elevator pitch. Give me a 30 to 40 second explanation of triphasic.
So triphasic is basically a way to organize your lifting progression through whether it be, you can use it off season or in season, but basically it's hitting all different points on kind of that force velocity curve, where you start out from a eccentric standpoint, building some strength through what we call like stopping or absorbing force, and then moving into an isometric phase, where it's coming from more of a static position and being explosive from that position, and then moving into that concentric, so that finishing part of that explosive movement. And so with triphasic, you're training power in each of those, or strength through power through speed through each of those phases, and then ultimately peaking at the end of that training phase or session, whether it be an off season leading up to the start of a sports season, or through a sports season leading up to, like, say, the playoffs at the end of the year. And so we use that, through our off season, through our in season, and has been absolutely huge in, developing the athletes that we have and developing the speed and the power that we have. That translates to the sports field, right? It's not just weight room strength. It's we're able to express that on the field. And I think, and you talked about, like, before, are you weaker than you were? I think we're as strong as we were, but I think the big thing is we're able to express that strength and power and speed better than we ever have been. You can be strong in a weight room, right? Slow through a lift, but then guys can't go transfer or express that on the field. So regardless of what our weight room numbers say, we're able to express our speed and power better than anyone, I think, on the football field, because that's where it counts. And so because of that training and the speed work that we've done, we're able to do it. Now,
probably the most inventive thing that you talked about, and you talked about in a podcast I heard earlier, and being a science guy, I kind of like this meters per second times kilogram shit that you came up with.
Yeah, the truck stick.
Yeah. So quick explanation of that, and then I got some cool follow-up for it.
Okay. So basically it boils down to momentum, right? And so we talked about blocking and tackling, right, is still the two most important skills on a football field. And the team that blocks and tackles the best, I think, is going to be the best. It gives you the best chance to win. And so with football being a contact sport, right, it's not necessarily just a 100-yard dash running down the lane uninhibited. Power ultimately is the more power we can generate, I feel like, is the most important thing. Speed is
power and strength are not the same thing.
Power and strength are not the same thing, right? So speed is going to be the greatest factor in improving that power. Strength is a component of it.
Yes.
But the marriage of the two, right? And being able to express that then on the field, and delivering that power into an opponent. And so it was also a great way then between 2020 and 2021 off season, I was talking with a couple of my assistant coaches and with my strength conditioning coordinator, Eric Pohl, and we were just talking about, well, what would be, because we have our record rank published with our speed stuff. And that's been great because we celebrate, the guys at the top. We celebrate the guys that improve the most at the bottom. Everyone's, happy seeing that improvement.
You have the wristbands.
You have our wristbands. Yeah, I got mine. I got my 20 mile an hour on.
Damn,
right,
you're fast.
Yeah, that was when I was doing it consistently over COVID, and I didn't have any coaching football to worry about.
Good for you.
So
I do want to mention that I like the fact that you go 19, 20, 21, 22.
Yeah.
Because we go 20 through 23 with my track team.
Okay.
But we'll be lucky if we have a couple 23s every year.
Right. And that's us we're lucky if we get a couple 22s.
Right.
And so
I think that's the way to go.
Yep. And we can celebrate those guys at 19. We get some big skill guys at 19. At our high school level, that's pretty darn good.
Yes.
We'll get and then we want our skill guys, up in that 20 and 21. And then we got some freaks that will hit 22, but that's, not the norm. So we wanted to find a way to record, rank, publish, celebrate the marriage of that speed and strength world, and talk about power and the momentum an athlete or football player can generate and deliver into an opponent on the football field. And so, this was that truck stick number was a great way to kind of have almost like kind of a level playing field now too, with all of our athletes when it came to our record, rank, publish, because now it took into account, the body mass of a player, not just, their flat out max velocity speed. And so once we started kind of playing with those numbers in the off season and kind of looking back and seeing, then correlating that with success, like our best players, a majority of those guys were rising to the top of that list, right? So we have like our two best offensive linemen that were always going to be in the bottom half of our speed numbers because they're 6'4", 250, whatever, big dudes, and can run, low fives for a high school kid, 5'2", 5'3". They're never going to be at the top of that list, but all of a sudden when you take into their body mass, and realize how much momentum and power they can deliver into opponent, it's showing up on a Friday. They're really, really good football players. They're moving to the top of that list. So for us now, that's kind of our big push, and our
awesome.
big sell for our guys is, what is your truck stick number?
So
right?
Here's my question to you. I'm going to be real specific here. You had 3 kids. Now that meters per second thing, you have to be able to like pass a science test to be able to come up with the meters per second.
Yeah.
I did it fine. But anyway,
yeah.
But I love the total numbers. You had 3 kids this year, over 800.
Yep.
So tell me about the number 1 guy, Caden King.
So Caden King is all conference offensive lineman for us the last 2 years, was a starter as a sophomore. And big dude, 6'3", 260, just big barrel chest, violent physical kid that loves to hit somebody. Really, really good football player. Had a knee injury his sophomore year that hobbled him over the course of his career a little bit. And so he was limited by that, but just a super athletic kid for his size, was able to run pretty well. He was like probably a 5'2" kid, but at 260, and then you put on the tape and watching the field. And I had a couple clips there at the beginning of my presentation showing, that sprint to hit stuff. He was a majority of those, putting guys on their back. He was able to take his power that he could generate and deliver into a kid. So he's a pretty special offensive lineman.
So when you score 857, that's meaningful.
Yes, it is. And that's so then we kind of looked at, like you said, we had 3 kids over 800. We started to look at how that pieced out. A majority of our kids are in the 600s. Probably a quarter of them are over 700. And then you get that, 1 to 2% that are up over 800.
Okay.
And so
tell me about Jacob Weightman.
So Weightman's kind of a freak, 6'3", 200 pounds, and runs a 4.5 40. and was one of our 22-mile-an-hour kids. He had a .92 right at the end of the summer before football season started. So, and he's a great story because he was a JV kid his sophomore year, a part-time varsity player his junior year, and then hit a growth spurt and just exploded, but had worked really hard, did everything we asked, was consistent with his speed stuff, and had developed a great foundation. And then just kind of, we talk about Water It is our big kind of program thing that we got from Steve Jones. And we just talk about laying that foundation and doing the work. And then, so, all of a sudden, then you see that growth, and that's going to happen for guys at different times. And so for Jacob, he was a kid that just hit a huge growth spurt here his senior year and really took off and had a great year for us. Was a two-way starter, leading wide receiver, defensive end, all conference kid.
So the third guy over 800, Grayson Schneider.
Yeah. So he's a freshman, which is
freshman.
He's a freshman in high school that looks like he's 18. And so it's one of those like genetic freaks that I'm excited to start kind of working with here now, as I hardly even gotten to coach him. He was on our freshman football team this year, and he's got some is one of those cases where grew and then now is trying to coordinate everything. So like he, straight line, he's great. Has still working on some change of direction and body control types of stuff, but he's going to be a kid that's going to make a name for himself here down the road, just because, the way he looks and his speed and power that, he's built, himself into already. He's going to be a pretty special player for us here down the road.
So if you had 10 kids in the 800s, you'd be okay?
Yes. Yeah, you'd be really okay.
Okay. So
we're okay with 3. So
okay. Let me I did a little bit of I love this number shit. So
okay,
I did a little bit of work here.
Me too.
So I looked up a pretty good linebacker for the Cowboys.
Okay.
Michael Parsons.
This will be fun. Okay.
By running a 4.39, his miles per hour, I would estimate it at 23 miles an hour, like a 0.95.
Okay.
I think that I don't think you can break 440 in the 40 laser without being able to run 23 miles an hour.
Right.
So his number at a weight of 245 pounds is 1148.
Yeah. Insane.
So based on his number, he might be a pretty good football player.
Yes. Right. And that's the great part I think about this is we can put some numbers now to how impactful of a football player they are, right? Because you can get a fast kid that maybe doesn't have a ton of football skill, or for whatever reason just can't transfer it out there. You get a really, really strong kid, same thing. Looks like Tarjan, plays like Jane, right? And just can't transfer it out there. But now we have this number that has some real transfer to what they can do on the football field. And that's what we lined that up when we showed our guys at the end of the season to start the offseason. We said, okay, here's, where Caden King and Jacob Weightman were at, all conference kids. Here's what they can do. If you want to, have that kind of success, here's some numbers that you need to try to get to. And we kind of broke that down by position group then, offense, defensive linemen, big skill guys, and then like our small skill guys. Here's, kind of a number that we feel will put you in a position to be successful on the football field. And so now they have some tangible evidence for themselves as they grow through the offseason. Where do I need to be?
So I did for one other guy. I'm kind of intrigued by Tristan Wirfs. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that would be a great one.
Okay. Is because, I love those. You're a multi-sport warrior like I am. And, Tristan Wirfs was a state champ in Iowa.
Wrestling, right?
In wrestling.
Yeah.
He's also a 5-time state champion in the throws. He threw the shot 66 feet. And so, and of course he's, he graded as the #1 offensive lineman in the Super Bowl last year. So he's really good. So,
and then what did he run? Wasn't his 40 insane?
Yeah, 4.85.
Yeah.
Which I estimated to run a 4.85. I believe you probably need to run about 20.9 miles an hour.
Okay.
Which means you're running a 1.07 in the 10-meter fly.
Yeah.
Not the 10-yard fly,
Not 10,
10
right, 10
meter
meter
fly.
fly.
And he weighs in at 322. So his truck it number, 1354.
Wow. Unreal.
And so I think you're onto something here.
Well, and I think, right, it would be great to do that for all those guys, right? Start going through an NFL roster and then transferring that to, you know, whatever I'd imagine the production and Pro Bowls and, you know, all pros and stuff like that. But then you'd have to, I think, leveling it then by position group, right? Because you're never going to have, you know, an all pro DB that's going to be anywhere near what Tristan Wirfs was. But
he's just not heavy enough.
It's just not heavy enough.
But he doesn't have to be violent.
Right, exactly. It's position specific. So I bet you, if you started doing it by position group then and record, rank, publish those guys, you'd get, you know, the best of the best in the NFL are probably at their position, probably have the best, you know, momentum numbers.
I think especially in the most violent positions, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, running backs.
Where delivering force.
That's right.
Every single down. Is huge.
And I just love the idea. Like I used to, to rank guys by weight class.
Sure.
That's really what you've done is just you just have an easy metric.
Because it can all be together now. Yeah, it doesn't have to be separate. You can all put it together.
And then you can start charting guys what they were as a freshman, sophomore.
And that's right. That's the exciting part. 3-4 years down the road now, Grayson Schneider, where is he at right now? What's he going to be, 3 years down the road, and be able to see that growth? And that'll probably be a number, we emphasize then now and track as much as a 40 or, a fly 10 time or whatever else. Yeah.
That's awesome. I loved when you were talking in your presentation, I believe it was your college coach that told you that everything is either taught or tolerated.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, that's a lot like everything is either intentional or by default. And then you said it like 2 minutes later. And that's the Steve Jones thing. So I love both of those things, because I think most coaches coach by default and toleration, even though if they really think about it, it's like, I need to get better at that. I know I need to get better at that. But you really live by that, don't you?
Yeah. Try to, at least as much as we can. And we're pretty transparent about that with our program as well. And that's something that I really emphasize with our coaches. If we come into a coaches meeting and we're complaining about something, it's like, well, we're either teaching them to do it or we're tolerating it. So to complain about it is completely worthless. And, we tell the same thing to our players. So that's been a huge driving force for me, and something I really took to heart and will always use. We have to be intentional about what we want to get out of our guys and make sure we're delivering that then, so we get those results.
Now, help me to pronounce the kid's last name. Will
Cheddar. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like cheese.
Like cheddar, even though it's spelled TSCH.
Yeah.
ET. Okay. Will Cheddar. Okay. So I'm almost like calling bullshit on you, like
okay.
when you're talking on your presentation. So I did a little research.
Okay.
So he really was a starting quarterback for 4 years.
Yep. Yeah. He took over halfway. We had our starting quarterback broke his collarbone. And he was a freshman at the time, our JV quarterback. And so he was next man up and played half his year as a starter his freshman year. And then sophomore.
How tall was he at that time?
Oh, that'd be a good question for his dad. His dad's on our staff.
Oh, really?
Yeah. His dad was played at North Dakota State, actually.
Wow.
And his mom was a basketball player at North Dakota State too. But he was probably 6, I would say anywhere 6'4", 6'5" at that point, at that time.
Okay.
6'3".
And so you kind of threw in there that he was state champion, the disc, and threw like 180.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, wait a minute. A basketball player, like a quarterback throwing 180. So you were off slightly. I think it's 175.7 is
Okay,
what
is
I
what it
saw.
was. Okay.
What I saw was
No, that's probably what it was. I
it's
probably
pretty.
I ballparked it. I didn't look up the exact
I think
number.
175.7 is pretty elite. And then you said he led the state in scoring for 2 years, and he's playing at Michigan.
Yeah, basketball.
So I looked it up on the roster because I'm like really fascinated now. And damn, he is a freshman, 6'8" freshman at Michigan.
At Michigan, yep.
Is he going to get to play?
He hasn't played much this year. So he was a part of the #1 recruiting class in the nation coming in. So they're a really young team. They have, I think, 2 freshmen. His 2 roommates were like top 10 in his class in the country, and so he's living with those 2 guys. And I think both those guys are playing. I don't know if both of them are starting, but playing significant minutes. So he hasn't cracked that like 7 or 8 man rotation yet, but is loving the experience. I keep in touch with him. He's one of my favorite kids, and so he's loving the experience and growing. And he'll have his chance. He's just buried a little bit right now on the depth chart, I think.
So here's my question for you about Will. How much did playing football and throwing the discus set him back as a basketball player?
None. Clearly, right? None.
It maybe made him better, right?
Better, yeah. And I think he would say that. He grew up. He's got an awesome family. It's I would say pretty uncommon in today's age the way his parents raised him. They live in you can go up and look more stories, but I grew up working on a farm, didn't have a cell phone until he was like a junior in high school. Doesn't have social media, like just worked, played sports, and that was it. And he's got 2 younger brothers. One was a sophomore for us this year and played as a wide receiver, and so he'll be a starter for us next year. And he's got a younger brother that's in middle school still. So excited to have those guys coming up through. Won't have his height necessarily, but just a lot of the same makeup that just made him who he was. Multi-sport athlete, the most competitive kid maybe I've ever coached. And I think that's the biggest thing that I try to emphasize with our kids with playing multi-sports is just that competitive excellence that you develop through that process. For me, that was my greatest attribute, I feel like, and take away from playing 3 sports throughout high school, was just that competitive edge and being willing to go out and compete, no matter what. And so that was a big thing that helped him. And then just the transfer of all the different skills, from those sports and helping improve and enhance whatever he was doing.
It's interesting too. I was shocked when I watched Jalen Suggs playing for Gonzaga last year. First of all, how good he was as a freshman. Of course, he comes out after his freshman year and he's the 5th pick in the NBA at the age of 19 or whatever. But then when I find out that he was Mr. Football.
Mr. Football. Yeah, he was Mr. Football and Mr. Basketball his senior year.
Okay.
Insane.
So these people that tell parents that you better consolidate all of your eggs into a basket. If you really want to be great and play at the next level, you better start thinking around the age of 13. They're just nuts, right? No,
completely. It's the worst thing for them because you see overuse injuries, burnout, and then just I think a limiting development in their athletic ability because they're just doing the same thing all the time and they're not getting any variety and challenging, neurologically or physically in what they're doing. And so they just, kind of get capped off there a little bit. But that's right. Like the one of the best examples, here's a kid, 2-sport athlete, was like you said, Mr. Football, Mr. Basketball, had offers from like Ohio State to go play football, and went the basketball route, and obviously justifiably so, being a lottery pick then in the NBA. But you don't need to do one sport all year long to find elite level success at what you're doing.
Now we're probably going to go over just a little bit here, but there's a couple things I just gotta hit on still.
That's fine.
You go sprint, non-sprint, sprint, non-sprint, sprint.
Yep.
In other words, Monday's a sprint day, Tuesday's a non-sprint day, Wednesday's a sprint day, Thursday's a non-sprint day, and then of course the game is the hardest thing you do. And
Yep.
that's backwards to a lot of coaches. They want the game to be the easiest thing, but what happens is your team's not as fresh,
right?
And
you're tired,
as powerful and mentally alert as they should be.
Yeah, and the game's still hard because they're what 80% healthy by the time they get there. So your
then
intent
they warm
was to
up
make,
for an hour. Then they warm up for an hour before.
Yeah. So your intent was to make the game easier, but really it's still hard because they're worn down and not anywhere near, their peak performance.
One of the questions I am now calling I've had to answer the question sprint practice versus non-sprint practice so many times that now I call it performance and fundamental.
Sure.
But it's the same thing. And you could say fundamental / teaching on those days. But the idea is we have a wave action in practice where it all goes back to Oregon's coach, Bill Bowerman, back in the day, saying that nobody sets world records with moderate practice day after day. And that's what you get if you go hard every day.
Right.
It's moderate every day because today subtracts from tomorrow. So your idea is that you want to have, super performance sprint level practices on Monday and Wednesday, correct?
Yeah. Well, and even Monday is still Monday. We only call it a sprint day, really, to be honest with you, because we sprint that day.
Because you time sprints?
Because we time sprints that day. But that's really it. Besides that, it's game plan and walkthrough if we feel like we need it in terms of like alignment assignment stuff. But there's no football specific work on a Monday outside of our sprinting. So that's it. So
day is not a hard day necessarily.
No, not by any means. I would say, and I think our players would tell you, like, none of our days are hard days.
I love it.
Which should be the case, right? So none of our days are hard days. Like, the only reason we call Monday and Wednesday a sprint day, Monday is because we time sprints. And then Wednesday is our only like full speed, max, whatever velocity contact practice, what would be traditionally looked at probably as a football practice like that other teams or coaches do like 3 or 4 days a week. So we do it only on a Wednesday, and that's the only day we wear pads. We're just helmets on a Tuesday, and we're just helmets on a Thursday before the game. And we still don't even wear pants, practice pants. We just wear shorts and shells, helmets and shoulder pads. And so we're not even going to the ground then during team time, but we are. So during our indie time, we're making sure we're doing is at least close to a max velocity indie drill work. So receivers running routes, type of stuff. Offensive linemen, we do like our inside run drill stuff. So they're, coming off the ball, max effort, finishing plays, things like that. And so whatever, position specific to what you're doing, max effort, max velocity, rest, right, between reps so that performance stays high. And then we track or we grade for finish on a Wednesday at practice. And so that's kind of a unique thing that we do. Yeah. So we don't
just
grade.
Like you do in games, right?
Just like we do in games. Yep.
Okay.
So we don't grade performance necessarily. We'll coach that stuff up when we watch film and make corrections and things like that. But we have like, I think 3 or 4 criteria for offense and defense, what it means to finish a play. And then our assistant coaches will grade their position group and just, put on a Google Doc, and we'll have a tab for each position group. Coach goes through as they're watching the film anyway. Basically it's a 1 or a 0 if they finish the play or not. And then we record, rank, publish finish grades. So we'll record, rank, publish their Wednesday finish grade, because that's a full speed practice and they should be finishing there. So they develop those habits, and then they're getting the most out of those reps, because we only get like 12 to 15 team reps offensively, and then 12 to 15 defensively. And then within those 12 reps, we're rotating first and second guys in. So like our first team guys are going to maybe get 6 to 8 team reps on a Wednesday. So they better be going full speed, in those reps as they get them. And then that's going to, be the best development and transfer for them as a football player. If they're, again, if it's, what'd you like the Oregon guy you said is they're not, if they're only going 80% or whatever, half-assing a rep, they're not getting better for it. And they're not getting ready for a Friday then. So we like to think that, the reps that our guys are getting, are the most impactful for their development and then getting them ready for a Friday. So
it's almost like you have 2 game days.
Yes, like a Wednesday, right? Very shortened version of it
Because
during that
you
team
video
time.
it, you
video
expect
it.
high performance, you video
Yep.
and grade it, and the next day you analyze it.
Yes. Yep. So then on Thursday, we'll watch that film, celebrate the good things we did, make corrections on things that need to get fixed up before the next practice. And then guys know, who finished and who didn't. Are we making sure we're taking care of business there, and getting ready for the Friday game? And then Thursday, is just our traditional kind of walk through whatever practice, more game specific situations, down and distance, positions on the field. We'll go through our special teams, but everything is helmets. This year, we basically when we were doing our team offense plays on a Thursday, I didn't even put defensive backs out there because we still would have guys balls in the air, and that competitive side of them, they wanted to both go sprint after it. And then we have guys running whatever. And I just didn't want any dumb injuries or anything to happen on a Thursday. So we're, for a lot of the time, on air on a Thursday, even just to make sure we're more worried about just being in good positions, and knowing what we're doing versus, like you said, it's not a performance practice, high performance practice necessarily. It's a mental, more mental day. So then we're fresh, fast, healthy for Friday.
And I think too that a coach listening to this may picture that you're not getting anything done on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, but that's not true, right?
No,
you're getting a lot done. It's just that it's not as game like.
Yeah, right. Well, and it doesn't have. I mean, it can be. It doesn't have to be full speed contact, knocking the shit out of each other to get prepared to play a football game. And that's, I think that's the thing that coaches have, if they're going to, implement a sprint based football, they have to let go of, we have to, guys have to hit and beat each other up during the week to be ready for a Friday. You can't have one with the other. And so, on a Tuesday, it's helmets and it's a lot of, again, indie time stuff. It's just, there's the contact piece isn't there, and it's not a max, effort necessarily day. It's a mental line assign things so that,
so your kids are still throwing and catching,
blocking.
We're going,
it looks like if you came out to a Tuesday practice, this looks like a football practice still.
Sure.
It's just the contact side isn't there. And we're not necessarily asking our guys to kill themselves, in the repetitions and things like that we're doing just to make sure that they're fresh. But if you came out to a practice,
you can be high intent,
right,
without being game speed.
Yes, absolutely. The attention to detail and the high intent there from a learning and development standpoint, Monday through Friday, is always the same. We always expect them to be present, and learning and focused and ready through that, but they don't have to be physically killing themselves or each other to do it.
Now, I tell the story all the time. My 1975, here I was, first day of varsity football. I was a starting quarterback. We had a 3-hour practice in the morning, and I almost could not get out of bed to attend the second practice. So I have no remembrance of how I performed in that second practice, but it couldn't have been good. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, and that's what I grew up in. And that's I think that's the hardest piece too, is teams still have success doing it that way, right? I mean, teams win state championships beating the crap out of their kids. And so then they believe that they won because of that. And it's more that they won despite that, because they probably had really good players and or good coaches schemes.
Good coaches, good players, and
right,
dumb always beats dumber.
Yeah,
dumb always beats
right.
dumber, right?
Yes, that's
because
true.
if the other team is copied, you're
Is
playing
worse, right? Yes,
or worse. They try to outwork you.
Right, you're still in business. So, and that was, the time, when we were, and well, I won't say we because it was a different you and when I was going through high school, but still, even when I was going through high school, in the late 90s, early 2000s, strength was king and grind, and we had 2-a-days, and it was a 3 or 4 hour practice on a mid-August day, and then we'd come back for like an hour and a half at night to do. I was a quarterback and wide receiver at different points, like, we were running routes and doing extra stuff then, so it was probably 5 or 6 hours of practice a day for the first 2 weeks, and we went 14-0 and won a state championship doing that. So I think the big selling point then is, there's different ways, right, to do it and be successful. Just like offensively, defensively, there's different schemes. They all can be successful. I'd rather do it a way where kids have a great experience, feel great, and are passionate about what they do, right? And coaches too.
Yeah.
And coaches too. Yeah. Then grind it, hate themselves, feel awful and terrible, and look back and like, yeah, it was great to win, but I hated every minute of it. So, you can, you can almost have your cake and eat it too, I think, with a feed the cats approach. Guys can feel really, really good, enjoy the experience, and be really, really successful on top of it.
Now, you're level 1, level 2, and level 3 RPR certified, and you also have several people on your staff RPR.
Yeah, I got one other guy that Alex Hain, my defensive coordinator, him and I kind of jumped in, 2 feet first, together in the process. And I was able to kind of go through and do a couple more of the certifications and things like that. But him and I very much kind of started the journey together. And, he's kind of my right-hand man through this. And it's great to have someone else to, just be like-minded that way and bounce ideas and give suggestions and things like that. It's not just me trying to come up with this for my other staff. I got other guys on staff that are looking to try to, continue to improve themselves in our program that way. So yeah, it's great to have multiple guys on staff to have that expertise.
And I'll restate what you said in your presentation, that you've had 0 soft tissue injuries in the last 3 years. And your varsity has only had 1 concussion in the last 3 years.
Yeah. Games missed because of that. We haven't had like we've had 0 games missed because we had that Caden King we mentioned earlier probably should have blown out his knee as a sophomore, like planted in the ground, pass protecting, guy comes flying and rolling through his knee. Like you watch it and it just makes you cringe. And I fully believe that, because of the speed, RPR stuff, feed the cats approach that we took, he didn't blow everything out. Like it was just an MCL tear. To say just, that's not to minimize it, but he was able to come back and play after that. But outside of that, like before that, and that was my big kind of impetus for starting this whole thing, was like we were at a school of our size, we were losing multiple like varsity starters due to injury, and we didn't have just another dude that could step up and play in that position, 2-way guys and stuff like that. So we need like all of our guys on the field to be successful. And so what do we got to do to make sure we're in that spot? Now with the contact sport, that we play in, things like that, collision injuries are going to happen, and there's nothing we can do about that. But if I can put our guys in a position to dramatically reduce that risk, then 100% I'm going to do that. And so I truly feel like RPR has had a huge effect on the health and performance of our guys from that standpoint. And we're able to, put our best players on the field week after week in a healthy position to help us win.
And when people talk like that, my mind goes to the fact that I don't even know if that's the best thing about RPR. That it might be the fact that we perform at a higher level,
right?
And like if you're belly breathing and torturing that bottom rib and hitting the psoas and all this, I ask kids sometimes, what's in your head right now? And they say, just what you're talking to me. Like they're decluttered.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
truly puts you in a performance state of mind.
Yes. Right. And to be able to, and I think that's been like, that's how we start. And I think I put that in my presentation too. Like every workout, every practice starts with RPR. And so they've come off probably a stressful school day and whatever else they got going on in their lives outside of football. And it goes back to, right, delivering that great experience. Like I want that hour and a half with us to be the best possible. And if they can then be present mentally with what we're doing, it's going to make that experience better for them. And then in turn, help them, right, grow, develop, be the best player they can be to help our team be successful. So that's a great point. And I agree with you 100%. The intent, and their focus is better than in the work that they're doing because of it.
I had a podcast with a couple of S&C guys at a Division I school, and they said that their offensive coordinator was addicted to RPR on game days. And
I do it with our kids. Like I lead it and I'm doing it, and a couple of our assistants are doing it with us, because for me it's centering myself. I'm the offense coordinator and head coach for a game. Like I got to be clear and focused as a coach, and so I'm going through and doing it with them as well every single day. I'm doing that before practice with them too, because now I'm focused and centered at practice as I go. I probably don't go through doing all 12 spots necessarily, but hit zone 1 for sure and everything, so that like you said, it just declutters everything and helps you focus and perform.
One that fight, flight, or the third F, freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze is a terrible performance state. And strangely, that's what I thought until I was 50 something and learned about this shit, that I thought that's what we were supposed to do before games, is get in fight or flight. And I never thought the freeze part. But I'm about, I know biology. I was a biology major in college. Fight or flight, your vision narrows.
Yes, right.
You're not seeing everything. You collapse your skeleton to prevent. And we don't perform or think well when we are shaking.
Right. It's self-preservation.
Yes.
What you go to, right? Yeah. And
it's not good.
Yeah. No, right. For to play a sport and perform at a high level, terrible.
And man, there are coaches that can't even, they weren't even themselves during a game.
Yeah. Because they got into that, like you said, that freeze, mode or whatever else. And you have to be able to think clearly. And, everyone in the stands usually lets you know that it should be a pretty easy job, but in the middle of it, it's pretty tough to do when you got 30 seconds and all the different variables to take into account to call a play or make a decision. It's a tough thing. And if you're not in a performance mode and have a clear state of mind to be able to make that decision, it's a really hard thing to do.
Man, this has been fun. I've really enjoyed this, Garrett. We're going to have you come speak live sometimes, but you can't speak 2.5 hours.
I know. Well, so I just got asked to speak at a clinic here in the Twin Cities in January, and they're like, "Oh, what do you want to speak about?" And I said, "Well, I just actually did a presentation for, this national clinic on sprint-based football." And then as I'm saying it, I'm like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna have to cut that in half though," because they're like, "Yeah, you got 45, 50 minutes." So I'm like, "Okay, well, I can try to piece that down to hopefully maybe the essentials. We'll have a long Q&A session or something like that after the fact, but we'll figure it out."
Yeah, it's not easy, is it?
No.
I think we have a couple Q&A things here.
Okay.
I have not looked yet. Jason Gelber from out in California, he's a TFC pro. Do you have a football weight class during the school day, or do you do everything after school? If no period during the school day, how do you find time during the season to lift, sprint, meet for film, and practice?
Yeah, it's we don't have a football time in the state of Minnesota. Maybe there are some schools that do, we don't. So it is tough to balance all those different things. So So our sprint days, Monday and Wednesday, is when we time our sprints. We do 40s on Monday and our fly 10s on Wednesday. So those sprint days, we don't do any weight room work. And so then we basically balance that time out on Tuesday and Thursday. Then we're in the weight room doing our weight room work when we would have been doing our sprint stuff on Monday and Wednesday. So the time of the day is the same. It's just kind of alternating back and forth. And then everything in the weight room, we go through kind of that triphasic approach, our eccentric, isometric, concentric through kind of the regular season into our peaking phase as we get to into the playoffs. So all of that is marrying really well with our speed work, because we don't want that to take away with our speed as we go through the season. And then our film time, we try to squeeze that in after practices on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because it's a little bit shorter practice. Wednesdays, that sprint practice, we have a little bit more that we're doing. We have like an inside run and skelly time that we add in on that day, because it's a sprint day, and our team time then as well is a little bit more because we don't do as much on a Tuesday or Thursday. So we try to watch our film after practice on a Tuesday while it's fresh in our players' mind. We're there for an extra 30 minutes, but our players and our coaches really like doing it that way because it's, like I said, it's fresh. It just happened. And then they're not having to go back and watch it later at night. Everything's kind of, when we're done basically with football on Tuesdays. And then Thursday, before practice starts, we watch Wednesday's practice film again. So then we kind of have those corrections or fixes that we need to make. We can immediately implement those at the practice on Thursday. So I think on my presentation, I had our practice plan kind of laid out for a couple of those days, or I think for each of those days of the week. So you kind of see our time that we have spent. So again, we're only on the field for an hour and a half. We're probably together for a little over 2 hours each day when you add in our sprint stuff, our weight room stuff, our film time stuff. But in talking with our coaches and our players, that's kind of been a evolving thing and trying to find the best balance for that stuff. I don't want our guys to have to do a whole lot outside of the time that we have with them. So we try to get it all done together, and then they have their time to, go do whatever else they have to take care of after that.
And since you guys are much more of a minimalist, the traditional program, like I always thought that lifting on a Tuesday or Wednesday was just stupid, because we were killing them in practice, and then we're going to expect them to have a great weight room session.
Right. No. And that's why we lift on
It's
Tuesdays
different.
and Thursdays, right? Because it's our non kind of violent practice days. We're just in helmets those days. So physically, it's not a toll necessarily on their bodies. We're only on the field for about an hour and a half. So to lift on those days, I think makes the most sense because we balance out, because we're not sprinting then either. So even the stress on CNS and stuff like that is we're not sprinting, lifting, practicing all in the same day. So we try to break it up.
Yeah. And since the kids and the coaches are fairly happy, and it's not torturous what you're doing.
Oh, right. It makes doing all those extra things easier, or like they enjoy it still, right? Yeah, because it's not we're not killing them at practice outside for 2 hours. Oh, now we got to go lift after that. It's like, no, like each one of those things are, we try to be as essential, right, with what we're doing, and just get that minimum effective dose that we need for high performance in each of those phases.
This next question is one that we get all the time. When you really put, like the health and happiness of kids, which I would argue tells kids you love them, which is really 100%. A powerful thing.
Yep.
If you're like that as a coach, but yet okay, here's the question. How do you discipline a player that shows up late or misses a practice for a non-legit reason, or misplaces his helmet, or other actions that just piss you off?
Yeah, well,
they piss you off.
Well, right, but that's as a coach, right? There's a lot of shit that pisses you off. No, I think the biggest thing, as a coach, we're a teacher, right? First And so trying to teach, what the responsible behavior or the, what we want that to look like. And we spend a lot of time with like culture stuff at the beginning of the year, especially. And then we do like one day a week of that as we get into the season. But we talk about early on in the year, like during camp, that first 2 weeks, about what does it look like at practice, in the locker room, on a game day. What are the expectations of our program? And our players have those conversations with each other and set those expectations. And so again, just trying to be, we as coaches just try to be facilitators of that early on, but we make sure that they vocalize and set the standard for what that is. We have a leadership council in our program then as well, which I think has been really meaningful. And so if there's, a kid who maybe is late to workouts or practices, and it's, not just a one-time thing, my mom wasn't home to bring me or whatever, there's a million different reasons why a kid is late or forgets something. But if it's more of a habitual thing and it's happening, then I'll bring that typically to our leadership council, and we'll talk about, who are the people that maybe have the best relationship or connection with that kid, and maybe finding out is there more there, and just trying to find root cause of that problem. And then ultimately it comes down to, for me, like if we have to discipline a kid, then the thing that they love the most is playing the game, right? Like that's why we're here. We love playing the game of football. So ultimately we take away playing time if they are consistently
in your case
short.
They love practice too,
right? Yes, right. So if they're having to miss that, right, then they know if I have limited opportunity in practice, I love being there, I need this so I can perform at a high level on Friday. They don't want to, right? They don't want to miss because they know it's going to negatively affect their performance. So ultimately for us, it's a playing time is what we use. We don't tell a kid to go run 5 laps around the field because he was late, because now he's tired and he's just going to have a shitty practice, on top of the fact that he was late, and coaches are going to be pissed off and stuff at him because now it looks like he's dogging it or he's tired, and it's just a snowball effect. So we don't use like running or conditioning as punishment in our program.
You don't do what Mike Leach did at Washington State, where you have a guy hold a cinder block over his head while the coach sprays cold water in his face.
Oh God, yeah, no. Well, I
it's like waterboarding.
Yeah, I was going to say I would not be in this position as a coach anymore. Having this talk with you, if we did something like that.
Oh my God! From Corbin Brown from Saline, Michigan, it just wants a clarification. So you lift and do speed work at the beginning of practice?
We do our speed work at the beginning of practice on Monday, and Monday, that's all we do. So a couple pieces to this answer. So Mondays, we sprint right after school. And that's been great before we do any of our meetings, because guys have been sitting in desks for 8 hours, and to go right into an install meeting for another hour after that is like, no thanks. I don't even want to do that right after being done teaching. So we're going to go sprint and get everyone excited and feeling good and doing something that they enjoy. So we do that first right after school. And I would highly encourage any coaches that are trying to implement a sprint base, but do that first, because that's going to get everything turned on for them, because we start with RPR and then we're sprinting. And so when guys walk into a meeting room, then after doing that, they are feeling good. Guys are laughing, they're in a great spot. They're whatever, science teacher that pissed them off during the day, they're not thinking about him anymore, or whatever else. So that's a great way for us that we start Mondays. And then and Wednesdays, then that's like our warm up for practice is our sprint. So we'll RPR, we'll sprint, and then we'll just start practice right after that. So that's, we don't go through and do any active warm up or stretching or any, we don't do any stretching, but that's our warm up for practice. Then on a Wednesday is our sprint session.
How long does it take you to get through RPR and sprint?
30 minutes, 35 minutes is about what we plan for. And we got well, we were blessed with an amazing fall. So like we were able to go to our track and do most of our sprint work this year. We have runways that we will set up in the hallway. That's what we're using right now. We got 2 big long rubber runways that we're sprinting on. So we'll set up those inside in a hallway in our school if we need to. And so there's, some transition time to and from that. But so when you build that in, it's probably 45 minutes from start to when we're starting our next football activity, whatever that may be.
And I already know the answer to this, but kids feel better after that 45 minutes than they felt.
Yes,
before.
100%. Yep. Like I said, on a Monday, walking into their meetings, they feel better, and they feel better starting their football practice then after that point. And then lifting, I think he asked about that too. So we do that actually we do that in the mornings just because of our with our strength conditioning coordinator handling that, and he's got other in-season teams. That gives us the most space and use of our full facility. So our varsity guys lift on Tuesdays and Thursdays before school. And then our under varsity guys, because they play a different day of the week, they typically go Wednesdays and Fridays because they play on Mondays. So we use all those other days of the week in the mornings for our lifts.
And the very last thing is more of a comment than anything, but it's cool that this is coming from Jacob Arnold, who in 2007 ran a 47-second quarter for me in the. So I mean, he was a total star, and he's now the head track coach and head football coach at Rockford Jefferson High School, and he just loves your weekly stuff, and he's going to be implementing your weekly schedule. So
cool.
So you've made an impact on
well,
an athlete of mine, and that's really, it's just a full circle type of thing.
Well, he happy if you reach out with any questions, anyone, him or anybody else that's listening and watching this now, happy to help. Just want to continue to grow, the Feed the Cats and sprint-based football. Just because I think if you go through it and you do it and you experience it and you see the impact that it has on players, coaches, and your program, there's no better way to do it, and you won't go back doing it any other way. So happy to help anyone that needs it.
I think that's the perfect ending, Coach. I am absolutely, I don't say blessed very often. I'm blessed to have met you. Have we ever met face to face?
No, this is the most we've probably ever talked. Like when you, when we talked on the phone that first time when you kind of asked me to speak, and I remember talking to my assistant coach that had kind of done our PR stuff, and we kind of dove into this together. You sent me a message, and I texted him right. I'm like, oh my God, Tony just sent me a message on Twitter, and like he wants to talk on the phone, and so we were all like high-fiving and stuff like that. So no, it's an honor to get to do this with you, and pretty special.
What was the podcast I heard you on?
Jesse Curtis.
Yes. Who is a rock star.
He's awesome.
He's a rock star.
Awesome.
I love that guy.
Really successful program that he's running down there. He's doing a ton of great stuff down there. So that was really cool. Yeah, we did that this summer. So that was fun. And I'm going to do another one with Tom Broback coming up here in the beginning of January. I think we're set to do one, and then I have another clinic I'm going to do at the end of January too, here just locally. But no, it's a full circle thing for me. Like I said, we implemented it or started January of 2019, and kind of watching and from afar with the TFC stuff and starting to build and grow, and here to now present 3 years later is pretty special. So thank you.
Please tell your dad I want to meet him someday.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That would be great. I would love to. Like I said, it'd be great to get to an in-person TFC, and I'll bring him with. So that'll be cool.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much. And we'll be in touch.
Awesome, Tony. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See ya.